How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Patriot DIY channel. I just got done building this rustic bar or island here on the man cave side of my shop, and I can't wait to show you how I did this, so stick around. Alright guys, now I know a lot of you like me have some type of man cave area or at least a place you like to entertain your friends and family, and a bar like this can fit in perfect to those types of areas. Not only does it give you extra seating, a place to hang out, but it also gives you storage, and if you do it right, it could really look awesome. Now personally, I like the rustic style, so I chose to go with some 100-year-old barnwood that I got from a friend of mine who was tearing down a barn. We went with the galvanized corrugated metal and we did rust it to give it that old weathered look. We have some really cool industrial looking black steel pipe down here for a footrest. We built our own custom wood bar top. And over on the other side that you'll see in a minute, we went with some farmhouse style sliding barn doors on the other side of this bar. Now this is a project that I've wanted to do ever since I started working on this side of my shop. And I'm going to get in here and show you step by step how I built the cabinet, the rustic exterior, the barn doors, the tabletops, and everything else. But first guys, if you haven't done it yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, hit that notification bell, and give us a thumbs up. Now as you're following along, I hope this video helps you out if you're building a bar for yourself. Now if you like the one that we have here and you want to build one exactly the same, I do have digital build plans linked in the description below if you want to pick those up. And as always, I will have links to all the tools that we're using, all the accessories and hardware linked in the description below as well, so make sure you check those out. Now if you guys are ready to spice up that man cave or outdoor bar area, let's get to work. First thing we need to do is cut down our plywood for the cabinet. Now I'm going to start by cutting it down to rough size with the track saw, and then I'll take it over to the table saw to rip everything down to its final dimension. Then I'll take the components over to the miter station and cut them down to length. Now I need to cut a dado into the sides of our cabinet for the bottom panel to sit in. So I'm going to put in my dado blade and set the fence to 4 inches. And then run each side through the table saw, cutting a 3/4 inch groove to accept our bottom panel. Now once I've done this, I do want to take a scrap piece of my plywood and test it to make sure it fits snugly, but not too tight. Once I've got all my components cut, I'm going to go over and give them a good sanding down to 220 grit. I am going to want the inside of this cabinet to be stained to match my barnwood, so I decided to pre-finish these before assembly. Now, plywood can be notoriously hard to stain well, so the best method that I've found is to first put on this pre-stain product and then use a gel stain. The color I went with is aged oak. After finishing all these components, I'm going to give them a couple coats of polyurethane and then I'll be ready for assembly. I'm going to start by attaching the bottom and sides, so I put wood glue into that dado groove and fit the pieces into place. Then I'll countersink and fasten these together from the outside using wood screws. Then I'll do the same for the other side, and you'll notice I have an offset on what's going to be the back of the cabinet, and that's where the back panel is going to sit. Now to prep my middle dividers and shelves, I'm going to go ahead and put some pocket holes into each side of these shelves. Then I'll measure and mark where I want these shelves to be on my middle dividers. Then I'll apply some wood glue and clamp them in place and fasten with 1¼ inch pocket hole screws. Once I have the shelves attached to the middle dividers, I can go ahead and put them in place. And I'm going to be using spacers and clamps to make sure I get these exactly where I want them. Then I'll fasten that middle divider from the bottom using wood screws. And then I can attach the other side of the shelf to the side panel through those pocket holes we drilled earlier. Once those are in place on both sides, I'm going to start prepping my back panel. This is going to be attached with pocket hole screws, so I'll go ahead and drill my pocket holes on each side of the back panel. Then I'll drop it into place on the back of the cabinet, and it fits perfectly into that offset. Then I'll fasten it to the side with the pocket hole screws. I'm also going to measure and mark the location of the bottom and the middle dividers so I can fasten the back to those as well. With that complete, I'm going to take the whole cabinet down to the floor and install a couple of top nailers. Then to add some support to that bottom panel, I'm going to add a toe kick piece at the bottom. And again, that's going to be attached with pocket hole screws. Now I'm going to make some spacers that are going to frame out that metal roofing we're going to put on later. So I'm going to cut a bunch of strips down to 2½ inches and then cut them to length at the miter saw. To attach these to the cabinet, I'm going to apply a liberal amount of wood glue on the back and then just put these into place and attach with brad nails. These spacers are going to frame out that metal roofing and give me the proper spacing I need to then go back and add the trim over top. And just to make sure you can't see this raw wood once everything's assembled, I'm going to hit those edges with a little black spray paint. All right, now we're ready to get our corrugated metal installed. Now I want this to have a very rustic look, so I'm gonna distress and rust this metal before we put it on there. It just gives it a nice weathered look, and if this is the look you're going for, I do have a full video on the process of rusting this metal, and I'll have a link to that right here at the top of the screen, so make sure you check that out. Now let's go ahead and get this metal cut, rusted, and installed. First thing I need to do is get these corrugated panels cut down to size. So I'm going to measure and mark it with a Sharpie. And there's a couple different ways you can cut this. You can either do it with tin snips or with a cutting wheel on your angle grinder. To rust these quickly, I'm going to spray on some muriatic acid. Now this is some really powerful stuff, so you want to make sure you wear a mask and glasses to protect yourself while you're applying this stuff. Then I'm just going to let that sit on these panels for a couple minutes, and then I'll go back and spray them down with some hydrogen peroxide, and that's going to make a chemical reaction that rusts these panels instantly. I'm going to let that sit for about a day, and then I'll spray them off with some water and seal it with some spray polyurethane. Now I'm ready to attach these panels, and I'm going to do that by adding some construction adhesive on the back of the panels and then fasten them to the cabinet using roofing screws. Now I'm ready for the Barnwood trim. I've already milled these down to 3/4 inch thick, but I still need to get them cleaned up, so I'm going to hit them with the pressure washer and give each piece a light sanding. Then I'll cut these down to length at the miter saw. I'm going to be attaching these the same way I did those spacer strips earlier by applying wood glue on the back. Then I'll put them in place and attach them with brad nails. I think this old wood looks great, and I love giving it a new purpose. I'm also going to be using that barnwood for the face frames on the other side of our cabinet, but first I need to put in some blocking where our door hardware is going to go later. Then I'm ready to attach my face frames. I'm using the same barnwood we used earlier and attaching it in the same way with wood glue and brad nails. I'm doing this one piece at a time so I can measure each piece individually and make sure it fits perfectly. This process is pretty easy as long as you take good measurements, and it gives this side of the cabinet a nice finished look. For this middle section of the cabinet, I want to have an adjustable shelf, so I'm going to use my Kreg shelf pin jig to drill holes for shelf pins so we can drop in our shelf later. Alright guys, now we're almost finished with this side of the bar, but I do want to add a footrest down here at the bottom. And you guys know I like to use black pipe in some of my projects, and I think that's going to work out perfect for this. The only difference is, instead of using the black pipe that you find at your local big box store meant for plumbing, I'm going to be using these products from a company called Steel Tech. Now the pipe and all the fittings look exactly like the steel pipe that we usually use. The only difference is none of it is threaded. Instead, it has set screws here at all the joints. So all you have to do is fit your pipe in place and tighten that set screw, and you're done. This works out great for DIY projects like this. It's going to be plenty strong for our needs, and it's going to be a little more forgiving since we don't have to get pipe specially cut and threaded to specific sizes. So let's get in here and get that installed. These fittings from Steel Tech are really easy to work with. You just cut the pipe to whatever length you need, drop it into the fittings, and you tighten down those set screws using an Allen wrench. All right guys, I decided to go with some farmhouse style sliding barn doors on this cabinet. So next I'm going to be showing you how I built these doors and installed them with the Barndoor Hardware. But in the interest of time, I'm going to give you just a short overview, and if you want the full process on how I built these doors, I will have a separate video for that, and I'll put a link to that right here at the top of the screen. I'm using 1x4 select pine for these door components. I'm going to cut them down to length at the miter saw and rip them down to 3 inches on the table saw. Then I'll drill pocket holes into each end of the stiles on the Craig 720 Pro. For the back panel, I'm going to apply some wood glue on the sides of each of these and then just clamp them together and let it dry. Then I build out the decorative frame for the front of the doors and use 1x2s to create an X shape. Once the glue on the back panel is set, I'm going to sand everything and assemble these doors using wood glue and brad nails. Then I finish everything off the same way we did the inside of the cabinet with pre-stain and gel stain. All right guys, now we're ready to get started on our top. For mine, I'm going with 32 inches wide by 75 inches long, and we're going to be using standard 2x10 construction lumber for this. I have cut these down to 8 inches wide, and we're going to be gluing these up using some dowels to help with alignment and to add a little strength. Then we'll get it stained and secured to the top of our bar. But let me go back and show you how I got to this point, and then we'll glue it up. First, I'm going to take my 2x10s and run them through the planer to get them as flat as I can. Then I cut each edge off on the table saw and cut each piece down to 8 inches. This is going to give me a total width for my bar top of 32 inches. Then I'm going to lay out all my pieces on the workbench and measure and mark for the location of dowels. Now to drill the holes for these dowels perfectly, I'm going to use this self-centering doweling jig. This makes this process a whole lot easier, and I will have a link to that in the description below. Once I have all those holes drilled, I'm just going to hammer in my dowels and get ready to assemble this tabletop. The dowels are going to help with the alignment of each of these pieces. It's also going to add quite a bit of strength to the joints. Now with all my pieces prepped, I'm going to apply a liberal amount of wood glue to the edges. Then I'll fit all the pieces together and clamp it to let it dry. Once that glue's had time to set, I'm going to use my track saw to cut off these rough edges and to cut the bar top down to its final length. Then I'm going to scrape off all that excess wood glue. I'm also going to fill any cracks or knot holes with some epoxy and give both sides a good sanding. And then more sanding. And then more sanding. I'm going to sand this table down to 220 grit to get it ready for stain. Once that's done, I'm ready for stain. So I'm going to go ahead and apply my pre-stain to both sides. And then stain both sides with that gel stain that we used earlier. I'm going to let that sit for about a day, and then I'm going to coat the top with some water-based polyurethane. I'm going to end up applying 4 coats of this, sanding lightly between coats with 320 grit sandpaper. And while I'm waiting for that bar top to cure, I'm going to turn my attention to the door hardware. This is pretty self-explanatory. You just follow the manufacturer instructions for install, and I will link to this hardware in the description. Now, because of the thickness of the doors, I did have to route out a recess for the door hardware into each of these doors. But other than that, the installation was pretty simple. They function flawlessly, and I think it looks great. Now that bar top has had time to cure, I'm going to go back over it with some fine steel wool to really give it a nice smooth finish. Now I just need to slide that bar top over on top of the cabinet and move everything into place. Before I place this in its final location, I do want to fasten it to the floor somehow. So I'm just going to be attaching a couple treated 2x4s to my concrete floor using Tapcon screws. That way when my cabinet is in place, I can just screw through the toe kick into these 2x4s. With my cabinet in place, I can go ahead and measure the proper overhang for the bar top and then fasten that to the cabinet from underneath using screws. I'm also going to go ahead and drop in my middle shelf. Now I only have an 8-inch overhang here, but I did decide to go ahead and add some of these floating shelf brackets just to give that overhang a little more support. And I think this black hardware matches well with the theme of our bar. Then I just finish it off with these black metal bar stools, and I think this looks awesome. All right, guys, our rustic bar is complete, and I couldn't be happier with the way it looks. I think it fits perfectly in my space here. It has really old saloon vibes, and I'm digging that. There was a lot going on this build, so I know it was kind of a long video, guys, but thanks for sticking around with me. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your input. And don't forget, guys, if you want to build this bar for yourself, I will have digital build plans linked in the description below, as well as all the tools and hardware that we use for this build, so make sure you check that out. All right, guys, that is it for our rustic bar build. I hope this video helped you out. Now, if you like the look of this room here and you want to see more, make sure you check out our videos. We have full build videos on the cabinets here, the concrete countertop, the wall siding, and everything else. So if you're outfitting your man cave, we have plenty of videos for you. Thanks for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.